at least speaking on my own relationship with grief, it can be so heavy and suffocating at times. And you almost feel it's not normal to be feeling this amount of pain and sorrow. And I think that films like Boyfighter are important because they show us that it's okay to be very sorrowful and to stare directly at things that are very, very heavy. But in those moments that feel impossible, you can still cling on to hope and love, because that's ultimately what the film is about, you know.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your new Oscar qualifying short film, Boyfighter. This is huge. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling excited, feeling grateful, um, nervous. I mean, it's a lot of different emotions. It's definitely something like you think back to your younger self that came out to, LA, or I mean any now any city really, but you came out with a dream to be a filmmaker and to be recognized. I mean, even just to be Oscar qualifying is such a huge accomplishment. So I'm feeling really grateful to be here, proud. Yeah.
That is amazing, as you should. So, the film Boyfighter follows a retired bare knuckle Latino fighter who's forced to confront the brutal legacy he's passed down to his son. Some themes are the impact of toxic masculinity and the consequences of limited opportunity. How did you get aligned with this project?
Well, I wrote the film in honor of my late brother. He passed in 2023, and unfortunately, his death came with a lot of complex grief, not just mourning my brother, but mourning the way he died, the fact that he died from the same um, situation as my grandfather, my uncle, who I never had the chance to meet, my mother's only brother. He died at 26. My great grandfather, many of my cousins, men who died very young due to the same violent legacy that has been felt kind of like a curse in my family. Um, so I wanted to make a film that kind of honored these men and their struggle, and was, Boy Fighter is a very, it's definitely unafraid to look at tragedy. But I think that's what makes it special, because I think that, at least speaking on my own relationship with grief, it can be so uh, heavy and suffocating at times, and you almost feel it's not normal to be feeling this amount of pain and sorrow. And I think that films like Boyfight are important because they show us that it's okay to be very sorrowful and to stare directly at things that are very, very heavy. But in those moments that feel impossible, you can still cling on to hope and love, because that's ultimately what the film is about. You know, the film is about staring directly at something. Sorry, staring directly at something very hard to stare at, but in it, find beauty. That's what I hope people will take away when they watch the film.
I am so sorry to hear that. I think that it's amazing that you've been able to turn this into such a powerful short film. You've described the film as finding fragile beauty amidst pain, sort of like what you were saying. How did you approach the visual language to balance that brutality in Boyfighter?
Well, for me, much of the film kind of teeters on the idea of memory and how we perceive memory. Because I also think that that's a big part of the grieving process. You cling on to whatever you can to remember your loved one that's passed. And um, so I wanted to approach the visuals, like, rather than feeling super like grounded narrative, like traditional narrative imagery. We really leaned more into very atmospheric, flash like, because more fragmented cinematography to kind of recreate that idea of memory and the importance of memory in both the grieving process and healing process. Um, Specifically for me, obviously it's different with everybody, but I'm deeply connected to landscapes. I think that they hold memory, and they hold, energy. And I like, for example, I think that as human beings, when we go to a out to nature, and we're, whether it's something as grand as the Grand Canyon or a simple oak tree that somehow persevered and has survived amidst the urban landscape surrounding it, there's something that moves through us. And I think that that's something that connects us, regardless of your religion. It's something that connects us to each other and to something greater. And so for me, whenever I think of my brother, I think of my grandfather, I think of men I never met that died, I can't help but think of them mostly when I'm in nature, which I feel like maybe it's some kind of connection to our genesis, to, I don't know, the way things were supposed to be. So with that said, again, this is all about the grieving process. Going through that grieving process, I found myself tied very much to wanting to explore memory and grief and love and hope through nature, because I think that's a very universal thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit a little bit on the intergenerational trauma that you feel within your own family. What was the environment like on set to help kind of curate such great performances? And also, I feel like a lot of what you're saying really bled through the screen. Like, as a viewer, I really, like, I felt it. I was like, I got emotional watching, as one would, but it feels like it went beyond just like people acting. And I'm curious to know what set was like.
Yeah, of course. So a big part of my process as a filmmaker, probably one of the most important processes as a filmmaker, is finding my location. I don't really know what my film is until I know where I'm filming. And again, that's kind of goes into what I was saying earlier. Regardless of nature landscapes or urban landscapes, I think that a setting really is a character in of itself and can define the story that you're trying to tell. So when I set out to make Boyfighter, obviously it's a film that is all about resilience and invincibility and what that means. I knew I wanted to go to a place that had a rich, complicated, beautiful history, and specifically a physical nature landscape that is defined by themes of resilience. And of course, one of the first places I thought of was Louisiana, not just because of its rich culture and history, but also because of a landscape that is marked by things like hurricanes, and in the northern regions, tornadoes. Um, it's the kind of place where you can't escape it. You're driving in these back, like, bayou roads, and you see trailer homes that are raised on stilts 3 stories high. And I was fortunate enough to speak to some of the people that live there, and these are people that are 3, 4, 5 generations living on this land, and they've seen Hurricane Katrina, that multiple hurricanes, and yet they are like, this is our home, we're not going. And they'll do whatever it's like they put armor on their homes. And so I felt like that idea of resilience and perseverance really ties into the story of Boyfighter. So I think when you shoot in a place like Louisiana, um, it's undeniable that connection. Another key location we shot at was the Fontainebleau State Park in Louisiana, and specifically where we filmed all of the nature scenes, the scenes with the trees and the hands, and him with his son telling him about the warrior. That was filmed on a plot of land that, like, right as you walk on, you see a plaque that talks about like over 200 slave quarters were built, like were founded on these lands before uh, Juneteenth, before that they were, I think they were one of the last people that were told that slavery had been abolished. And so, like, again, like, when you step onto a place like that with that kind of memory, you become a part of it, whether you want to or not. And on the same token, it was also before the atrocity of slavery. It was a very, very famous or well-known place for indigenous people to come and to trade. So it's a place that has known beauty and life, and also atrocities and horrors. So again, when you go to a place like that has endured the test of time, and such rich, complex, haunting, beautiful moments, it's going to seep into the frame. At least I believe it does. And by the way, when I filmed there, I didn't know this until, and going into what was set like, it was beautiful to work with a crew that understood and knew the history of where we were filming and brought that up, made sure that that was known, because I think that wherever you go, whether it's New York City, Louisiana, the UK, anywhere, you need to respect the place of which you choose to film and do your art, I think, because it will grace you, I think, if you approach it with respect and admiration. So yeah, the people, my crew were, they were incredible. That they It was very much, everyone knew that the story was deeply personal. Everyone welcomed me with open arms and really held me. It was a very hard film for me to make because of the personal aspect of losing my brother, and it's still so raw. I don't know if it'll ever not be. So I think that because of that, there was an energy to the set that definitely felt almost more like family. And I don't know, it sounds cheesy, but like it felt like a very sacred bond that I made with every person on set, down to like our security guy who watched our trucks, at night when we all went to bed. Everybody was there and was kind and supportive of the endeavor to tell a story that's very hard to tell.
Wow. Do you feel like while you were filming, your perspective on the entire situation with like your brother passing and also the other members of your family passing, did it shift your perspective a little or even like allow as much healing as something like that could? Because obviously that pain will never ever go away.
Yeah, I mean, I think no, not totally. I think that what I got out of it was connecting to other artists and to landscapes, to a place I had never been to, Louisiana, prior, to my location scout. Coming to a place, to a location, to its people, and connecting. And again, I think that's kind of the thing about Boyfighter, of like, it's okay that you're hurting, and that it's like, I feel like the film gives permission to be like, it's okay to really feel this and to look directly at it, like I said earlier. So I think, rather, I mean, I don't know if healing is the proper term, but I would say definitely it gave me permission to really think about it, to really ponder my brother's passing, and the previous men in my family who I felt like I was robbed of relationships and time with, and to look at it in a very real and honest way that wasn't just about making sure that, oh, there has to be some kind of major turnaround positive message at the end, or there needs to be some kind of epiphany. I think that Boyfighter isn't about that. It really is about just holding your hand through grief and trying to make sense of tragedy, even though sometimes there's no right reason, right? It just happens. And so I think that, there's a lot of obviously, when you make films, they come out with themes or messages, and there's a lot of people want to know, what does this mean? What are you trying to say? Is toxic masculinity, or lack of opportunity, or fatherhood? And of course, the film explores these themes inevitably, but I don't really know what the film means. It's really just an exploration and kind of an excavation of grief and connection and love.
Totally. So Michael did an amazing job. Amazing.
Yeah.
How was collaborating with him?
I mean, incredible. I think he's honestly a genius. I'm honestly shocked he's not like an A-list like Brad Pitt actor. I think he definitely has the talent, and he also obviously has the looks. He's like a triple threat. And I think the really cool thing about Michael too is, he's really, really collaborative. He comes onto set, and he wants to hear he wants to know as much about the character as possible, and talk, rather than an actual like rehearsing the lines and the blocking and things like that. He was much more avid about, talking about the world, talking about the character. He was specifically focused on making sure, because it's such a heavy story, he wanted to, even if it didn't make it to the screen, he wanted to understand this character's joy, beyond just his suffering. It was very important. That's why, like, a lot of I don't know if you might not notice, but the character has a lot of different tattoos, and he has a little bit of his own style, where how he dresses, and that's primarily because Michael wanted to be like, this guy. I want him to be more than just his suffering and his grief. I want to really like know him, and that was really beautiful because, again, with a short film, you don't have the opportunity to explore it all. So even knowing that, even with a short film, this very experienced and talented actor was dedicated to knowing his character, or this actor knew his character through and through. So yeah, it was a really beautiful collaboration.
The film industry has made strides toward gender equity, but directing, especially in certain genres, remains completely male dominated.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience like navigating this arena?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think a film like Boyfighter is like a film that we would traditionally see directed by a man, specifically because of the action sequence or the fighting sequence, the themes of fatherhood. Um, so I do think, though, that that's why, I don't know. I don't want to generalize or anything, but I think that's kind of what helps Boyfighter, is the fact that maybe there are some more feminine sensibilities that are brought to a traditionally male POV dominated story. I think that, and that was a big conversation that I would always have. I said, I really want to, and not that, and it's ironic that I say I want to lean into tenderness and sensitivity and softness, as if that is not masculine, right? Like that those themes can't be tied to men. But I think that that's what boy fighters strive to do, to showcase those sensibilities in a male or father-son dynamic. Um, and I don't know, I think that the thing when it comes to being a woman in the industry, there's definitely, it's more of like a microaggression type thing, and more like, I don't know, constantly questioning, am I here because I'm just as good as everyone else? Or am I here because, I'm getting a handout, or because I'm like, someone wants to give me a favor or whatever. Um, like and I think that's just part of imposter syndrome in general with artists, especially artists who come from marginalized communities. We are trained, because of what the world puts out, what society puts out. We've kind of grown up with this idea that these spaces aren't meant for us. And so when things start moving forward, you can't, I mean, at least for me, I can't help but question my place. But I think that that's why it's so important that we continue to push those boundaries, and see diversity in these roles, both in front of and behind the screen, because people need to see themselves in these roles, and know that it's not a handout. It's because you are just as good and talented, and deserving to be there as the traditional, I guess, the people that were traditionally in these roles.
Was there anyone along this journey who like gave you any advice or feedback that you received that helped you internalize that message more?
The message about being a woman director, or
Maybe getting through your imposter syndrome, or if you ever felt like, oh, I must prove myself because I'm a
yeah.
woman directing.
Yeah, I work closely with, her name is Marissa Jo Sarar. She's a showrunner, writer, executive producer. She did a show called Black Cake and Woman of the Movement. Um, she's been my mentor for a few years, and now we're collaborating on a few things, and I definitely owe a lot to her because, um, she was the first person that read my work that was someone who I aspired to be, and really gave me the time and the effort and the energy to make me believe in myself, that, to make me feel like I belonged in the room, and that my voice was, needed, I guess you could say. So it wasn't any kind of like specific advice, I would say, but it was more just, that's why it's so important if you're in, and we all are in a position of, uh, I guess you could say, a position where we could be a mentor. There's always someone looking for guidance, regardless of where you are in your journey. And I think that's why it's just so important to be open to each other and to be kind to each other, and this isn't just a one man for himself type of line of work. It really is built on connection and collaboration. So we need to be open to each other and to support each other, because you just never know who's going to step up and be next to you, and we all have to just support each other. It's a really, really hard industry.
Is Boyfighter a film you'd want to turn into a feature, or do you feel like it's complete?
I definitely have. So I have a feature version that I would like to make. I think it obviously explores like more of the underground street fighting, and it's because obviously the short, you only have so much time. But yeah, I would love to make it into a feature. I mean, right now I'm working on a feature film that I'm shooting in Scotland next year, which is a completely different genre, different story, different world. But in the meantime, I'm always trying to circulate that next project, get things off the ground. So Boyfighter is definitely a feature film that I hope to make. It's different, but it's still, the core themes and storyline are the same.
You have a feature that you're filming next year. What else is coming up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think most anticipating is obviously that feature. Boyfighter was like my fifth film, and so I'm like fifth short film specifically. So I'm feeling very grateful and honored to have made Boyfighter, and feeling ready to really jump into the feature space. Um, so I'm making that in Scotland, and then aside from that, I'm working on the other feature, so the feature version of Boyfighter. I am currently writing that script, and then also working on a TV show called Moonshine, with a company called Undisputed Cinema. It's Gina Prince, Bythewood, Reggie Walk by Bythewood company, and just continuing to write and just see what sticks and go from there.
Well, congratulations. It sounds like you have an awesome 2026 ahead of you. Thank
Thank you.
you so much for speaking with me. It was so great to get a little peek into your mind.
No, thank you so much for having me. It was really cool and amazing to talk to you and share the world of Boyfighter.
Thank you.